Now today is a very special day because we're finally reviewing the Alta Alyssa speakers. Now, if you have been watching me for a while, you know that I really like the Alta Alyssa speakers, which is a speaker I reviewed about a few months back. Now I know some of you that have watched my Totem speaker review will be like, Jay, but you like Totem speakers. And I do. And I will tell you the differences between all these models that I have reviewed in this video and what the differences are, why I like both of them for different reasons. And we'll get into that in this video, but let's get down to explaining what this Alta Alyssa is all about. So first thing is first, when I got these speakers, I had to do a small modification on these speakers in the crossover. Now the crossover itself is very impressive. It's a third order crossover, I believe. And with instructions from Michael Levy, who's the engineer behind Alta speakers and also the founder of Alta Audio, I did the modification. And this was a very interesting process for me because I got to hear the immediate before and after the modification in the crossover. And even such small changes that I was able to do on these Alta Audio speakers really made a pretty big difference. And that was in the sound staging and also a little bit on the higher frequency, but more on that later. Now getting into the nitty gritty of the speaker, at first glance, they kind of look like, someone took a jackhammer or something and sliced the Alta Alyssa speakers in half or driver down. And although they may look like this, there's a specific reason why they look like this, and it doesn't exactly look like a half version of the Alta Alyssa. Now the cabinet itself is very deep, and the reasoning for this cabinet being so deep, I believe, is because it really needs that port length. And also the shape of the speaker is unusual as well, as you can see. And this is because they want to remove all the nodes they don't want inside the cabinet. And to even further enhance the resonance control of the speaker, they use a cabinet material called Dampard, which is basically a multi-fiber material sandwiched between a dampening material like an acrylic, some sort of thing. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but basically it is a very dead sounding cabinet. And you can really test that by really just knocking on the cabinet itself. Okay, so here comes the knock test. And for this one, try to concentrate on the sound of the knock. I know there's maybe ambient noise or something like that, but as audiophiles, try to concentrate, okay, on the knock. Here comes. And now I'm knocking on it pretty darn hard, so that's pretty good. I feel like the faceplate is more dead and the sides are also more dead than the top, but very small differences. Overall, very minimal resonance, if any at all. So when it comes to a speaker design like this, nothing is really left to chance. Everything is accounted for, including the shape of the cabinet, including the material used in the cabinet, the dimensions of the cabinet. Everything is accounted for, and nothing is really just a guessing game. Now, one thing you will notice if you look at the speaker is that it is ported in the back. And if you look at it just from outside glance, you would think, oh, that's a ported speaker. But that is, again, not entirely true. This speaker is able to dig down to 32 Hertz. And with room gain in my room, I think I got way more than that, because when we hooked up the REL subwoofers, the new T7X, myself and my friend Tujen, we were just like, well, I don't really think these speakers need these subwoofers at all, because it's able to go down as low as the REL subwoofers can. And it just seemed like the RELs were just kind of giving more bass, not more extension, which is really something to be said about a speaker like this, a bookshelf speaker that can extend down low and don't really need a subwoofer. And that would have been really hard even with a long ported design like this. And I'll tell you right now that these are not just a ported design, but let's just say it's just a ported design. Then these speakers would technically go down to about 45 Hertz instead of the spec 32 Hertz. However, this is not, like I said, just a ported design. In fact, it's also a transmission line. So it is a hybrid between a transmission line and a ported design. So the port on the Alta Alyssas tune the speakers from resonance and up, while the transmissions take over from resonance on down, which allows the speakers to extend down lower, and also they found that this actually improves their power handling. So this means that you get a much cleaner bass and a greater extension. So it's basically utilizing the strengths of both transmission line and a ported design. And even though this is a 6-inch mid-bass woofer, just a 6-inch driver, it does tremendous amount of work and it just blends perfectly with the tweeter. Now the tweeter again is a little bit unusual, is an aluminum ribbon tweeter. And the thing with ribbon tweeter is they're extremely cool, but they're also, I found, to be very directional. And I think this is where really the magic really happened with these speakers. Now, the way these ribbon tweeters behave on the Alta Alyssa and the Alta Alec is a little bit unusual. And I say it's unusual because the ribbon tweeters that I have experienced in the past, ribbon speakers in general, altogether, tends to have problems at higher volumes because they tend to fluctuate really fast and is not able to exert as much. But at higher frequencies, I guess that's okay with ribbon tweeters per se. But what's again unusual is that ribbon tweeters are known to be a little bit more directional. Too directional, in fact. But these tweeters don't behave like that. In fact, I don't really need to point these speakers directly at my ears to get a really nice sweet spot. These speakers provide a wide sweet spot and I don't need to tilt them all the way. I just like them a little bit, about halfway to my ears. Not directly at it, but just hitting maybe my side of my hair or something like that. And the reason being is that gives me a wide soundstage with pinpoint imaging. And that's kind of unusual for a ribbon speaker because usually, like I said, it's more directional, so I would require ribbon tweeters to be really directly hitting my ears most of the time. But these speakers don't behave that way. They have a wide sweet spot. So obviously they've done some work to it. Also, I found that they image best and sound best when I have these speakers, the tweeter, just below my ear level. Not directly, but just slightly below. And I found that to be the best positioning. So you do require a little bit of a lower stand for these speakers. I was using about 24-inch stand for my listening spot. And I also found that having two speaker stands, because these speakers are so deep, also help to make them look better, but also really helps with the sonics in the bass region as well. Makes things a little bit more tighter. Now, I will link some of the speaker stands that I used with this speaker. That won't break your bank, but will be very effective in the description below. So the sound of these speakers are extremely different from most speakers out there, including the Totem speaker that I reviewed and loved so much. But before we get into that, I think the Bucard S400 is a speaker that you guys may have heard as a reference point here that is somewhat similar to this speaker, except these speakers are the Bucard S400 on extreme steroids. That's what these are. Now, describing the sound firsthand, the bass is very full, it extends down low, and it's a very pleasing controlled bass. I don't hear any flops or any, booms and unwanted resonances on the speaker. Everything is very pleasant in the bass, and that's the first thing that I notice is the bass on the speaker. It's very full, and I had the bigger brother, the Alta Alec speakers here before. And even in comparison with that, I was just thinking to myself, well, these speakers seem to have about the same amount of bass and texture and quality. I would say the Alta Alec is a little bit more weighty because it's a floor stander still. But man, it was really hard to, because I didn't have them side by side, it was really hard for me to justify the differences there in terms of the bass region. Now when it comes to the mid-range on these are just silky smooth, much like the Alta Alec, but even more silky smooth, and the mid-range on this is very special. It has a warmer tone to it than the Totem speakers. It has a bit more of gut in the mid-range when the vocals hit. The male vocals especially sound more fuller and warmer. And the high frequency is a little bit more smoother. It's more smoother than really any speaker I've heard before, including Wilson Audio, Totem speakers. The high frequency is liquid smooth. And my friend Tujin, who is prone to high frequencies, he doesn't find these bright whatsoever. So if you're someone who just can't deal with brightness whatsoever, these speakers will not get bright. In fact, I've paired these speakers with name gear and many gear that has attribution to making things a little bit more brighter and kind of skewed towards the brighter side, and it really doesn't get bright. No matter what kind of gear I use, it doesn't get bright, and that's quite surprising. So the high frequency is extended and it has air, but it just silky smooth on the top, doesn't get bright whatsoever. Probably the speaker of 2020 and 2021 that doesn't get bright. I mean, it's right up there with like Gershwin speakers in terms of, that smoothness on the top. Just very smooth on the top. Buttery smooth. Now, if I have to compare it to the Alta Alyssa speakers that I reviewed in the past, I actually prefer the Alta Alyssa speakers by a small margin. And the reason is three factors. First, it has a wider soundstage. The Alta Alyssa speakers, maybe because they're bookshelf speaker, just has a wider soundstage, just a wider and deeper soundstage. And imaging is also improved with this speaker, again, maybe because it's a bookshelf speaker. And third, most important for me, I prefer the tonality on the speaker. It's slightly more warmer toned, but it is certainly something that I can see a lot of people enjoying, and I just enjoy it just on a daily basis. Every time I just want something to be a little bit more emotional and just emotionally grabbing, and I don't want to be listening to like individual details and stuff like that. Now that's good on these speakers as well, but when I want to be emotionally engaged, these are the speakers that I throw into my system. Now, comparing it to the Totems, okay? The speaker I'm going to compare is the Totem Tribe Towers because they're similar price range. Now, the Totem Tribe Towers, I prefer it in terms of tonality. And that's because I find the Totem Tribe Towers to have a closer resemblance to what I find to resemble a real instrument. I like those speakers because of the tonality. Now, in terms of the bass region, while the Totem Tribe Towers have a very clean and fast hitting bass, these have a more warmer and richer and more textured tone in the bass region, which allows me to enjoy my music a little bit more emotionally rather than really analyzing the music in that way when I'm listening. Now, in terms of the mid-range, again, is more full of bloom on these speakers. It's more emotionally engaging because it's a warmer tone. And if you like something a little more warmer from neutral, then these speakers are really good at that in the mid-range. Everything sounds fuller, richer, textured, and that again gives me more of that emotional factor. Almost like I'm listening to a really good tube amplifier is the sense I get. And when it comes to high frequencies, the Totem Tribe Towers are extended. It can get tad bright depending on the recording. It's a little bit more engaging on the top end in comparison to these speakers. Now, I find that the Totem Tribe Towers don't get bright for me for most of my listening sessions, but there are tracks like modern tracks and some tracks that do get a little bit tad bright, and you can get the Totem Tribe Towers to a brighter level depending on the gear you're using. While the Alta Alyssas just never gets bright whatsoever. Tracks that you play, the gear you play with, I just find that it's so silky smooth on the top end with no risk of brightness whatsoever. Now, I found that because of that, when it comes to poor recordings, I would either pick these or the Metal version 2s, which are the $15,000 Totem speakers. And that's because I find that the Metal version 2 just has a little bit more silkiness on the top end, more refinement. So out of the three, the Alta Alyssa speakers would be my choice for poor recordings. Now, when it comes to sound staging, I feel like the Totem Tribe Towers and the Alta Alyssas are head-to-head. Now, if I had to pick one, I think the Alta Alyssas, maybe because they're a bookshelf speaker, has just a slightly more vivid, wider soundstage. But the Totem Tribe Tower seems to have a more defined imaging within the soundstage. So it's a give and take. There's no perfect. So here comes a J analogy. It's a big one. Okay, here it goes. When I listen to the Totem Tribe Towers, the Totem speakers, I feel like I'm taking a shower at the right temperature. Not too cold, not too hot, just warm. I like my showers warm, okay? Now, when I listen to the Alta Alyssa speakers, I feel like I just turned the knob to the hot zone just by a smidge. And now initially it's a little bit hot, but my body gets used to it, and now I feel like I'm taking a deep bath instead of a shower. I know, absolutely terrible analogy. Here comes another one for those of you that don't take showers. When you go to a coffee shop, you have that coffee that is just perfect black coffee, just to die for. The scent is great, it's rich, it's purity at its best, black coffee. But then on other days, you feel like adding some cream, adding a little bit of smoothness into it, a little bit of sugar maybe. And now you have a delicious sweet coffee, almost like a macchiato of some sort, some cocktail, one of those bullshit coffees from Starbucks. But anyways, Alta Alyssa will be the creamy, rich coffee. The black coffee would be the Totem Tribe Towers in this case. Now, I know some of you may not like this analogy, but that was my best attempt. I think that's the best way to put these two speakers in comparison and into perspective, because I love coffee and showers. Don't judge. Now, when it comes to gear matching, these speakers are not really hard to match with different types of gear. Now, they do change with a little bit of different types of gear. Like if you use a tube amplifier, for example, it has a wider sound stage, loses a little bit of that pinpoint imaging. But depending on the gear you use, definitely you will be rewarded with your choices or not. But they work well with variety pieces of gear. And the reason being is that these are not that hard to drive. They're 87.5 dB in sensitivity. They are a little bit less sensitive than the Alta Alyssa speakers, which I found to really be perfect with like even tube amplifiers. But these Alta Alyssa speakers, I found that really like some power. Like when I was playing around with the Bryson amplifier, for example. Absolutely loved it. Just great dynamics, really slams hard and grunts really hard in the bottom end. Now, when I say grunt in the bottom end, I really mean grunt. These speakers are like floor standard speakers. With multiple types of gear, these really have deep bass and grunts. And really, most of the time, I'm just sitting here going like, I really don't need a subwoofer with these speakers whatsoever. And even my friend Tujan agrees with me. Every time he's here, he's just flabbergasted. He's just like, these don't need a subwoofer. So really, these don't really need a subwoofer or anything like that, in my opinion, unless you're using this for home theater purposes, for watching movies or something like that, then you may need a subwoofer. But other than that, for music listening, these are perfectly adequate, in my opinion, in terms of the bass grunt and amount and impact. Now, when it comes to the placement of these speakers from the wall behind them, they do need some space. I found that they do best when they have some breathing room. So have them away from the wall as much as possible. Now, general rule of thumb was about 3 to 4 foot from the wall behind them in my space. And I like to sit a little bit farther away from the speakers than the distance between the speakers. So I would measure the speakers distance between the two speakers and then sit a little bit more than that distance, if that makes sense. And this gave me the perfect, bass, mid-range texture, imaging, sound staging, really deep sound staging as well. And so that gave me the best performance of these speakers. So that's it from me. Thank you for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Reading some of your comments from the Metal version 2 Totem speaker review. Matthew Wright, I love the dishwashing test. It's a real thing. Hell yeah it is. Hell yeah. You got moves, homie. Oh yeah, I got moves. You know what they call me? They call me the octopus. Crank the tunes. Your best video yet. Liked the dishwashing portion. I am guilty of it too, man. The comment section was great as well. Hey man, we're all guilty of it. Any of us that denies it, you know, they don't know what dishwashing dancing is like. It's a pleasure, it's fun. You should try it sometimes. Wash dishes while you dance and listen to speakers. It's absolutely a delight. Sean Heisler, I got it. You look like Michio Kaku. I love that guy. Really? I look like this guy? Stevie G, rip off speakers priced like cars. You need counseling. You know, I did get counseling once, but it ended up with my counselor being convinced by me and becoming an audiophile. Now he has gray hair too. And a really expensive system. He makes a lot from counseling people, apparently. Thomas Anderson, is purple hair popular this year? Are you colorblind, man? And I went through all that effort to get my hair to this color, and now people are calling it purple? I'm suing my hairstylist. Hey Jimmy, is my hair purple?